Greetings from Our Lady of Hope. Today is the feast of the Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which means that Christmas is only 9 months away. Yesterday I put a little bit of a poll on Instagram asking people, or requesting that people ask me questions. There wasn't a lot of feedback, but several people asked about recommendations for prayer. As we know, we could pray in many ways, both privately and with other people. Praying is best, I think, when we do it with what we're comfortable with. If we're comfortable with the rosary or with scripture or novenas, whatever we're comfortable with, it's best to begin there. People that know me well know that I'm constantly recommending a form of prayer, a form of meditation, which is based on the Bible, on the sacred scripture, which is called Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina is a prayerful way to use as the source of prayer the sacred scripture to be led into greater meditation and reflection. There are 4 steps for Lectio Divina. The first is reading, the second is meditation, the third is prayer, and the fourth is contemplation. We say that reading seeks, meditation finds, prayer asks, and contemplation feels. It's a 4-step approach to prayer, using as its basis the sacred scripture. So let's imagine you're going to be praying using Lectio Divina today on the Feast of the Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. You begin with reading from that section of the scripture, from the first chapter in Luke's Gospel. It's best, if you're going to be engaging in this type of meditation, to read the passage at least 2 times, but preferably 3. Slowly and with intention, trying to hear and to see and to make sure that you understand exactly what is taking place in the scripture passage. And so the first step is reading the scripture passage 2 or 3 times. You could do this on any given day, maybe just simply using the gospel for that day's Mass. When you've concluded reading 2 or 3 times, put the Bible down and you go to the second stage of Lectio Divina, which is meditation. The first stage, reading, was seeking, meditation finds. During this time we sit quietly, initially beginning to focus on our breathing, to quiet our hearts, our minds, and to begin to meditate on what we just read, trying to understand and to reflect on everything that we read in the scripture. Who's there? What's being said? Where is the context of the gospel? A helpful way to go through this period of meditation is using what St. Ignatius calls the composition of place. Quietly meditating and trying to imagine the place and see all its elements, to see and imagine the people, the interactions, the physical context of the gospel. This is not for a defined period of time. Obviously, people that are much more comfortable with Lectio Divina can engage in meditation for 30 minutes, quietly chewing and breaking down what has been read in the scripture. But eventually it leads you to the third part of Lectio Divina, which is not easy to predict when it will happen or what that will look like. The third part of Lectio Divina, moving from meditation, which finds, is prayer, which asks. Meditation naturally leads you to say things to God, to approach God in a given way. So let's imagine you were meditating today on this passage of the Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and you are really struck by Mary's freedom, by her willingness to embrace God's will. That might make you turn to yourself and reflect a little bit on the ways in which maybe you're not as free, you're not as willing to accept God's will for your life. So your prayer will likely take the form of asking God to help you to understand His will, and asking God to help you to embrace the will and make it your own. Prayer based on meditation is not predictable. It is personal to each person and takes form based on what strikes the person in that gospel passage. So going from reading to meditating to praying, praying which asks, and finally contemplation which feels. You conclude the time of prayer by simply being in God's presence, acknowledging that He is with you, acknowledging the gifts, the insights, or maybe the encouragement or challenge that you felt during that time of prayer, to acknowledge it before God, and finally to conclude to make a resolution that is to put into action the insights, the consolations, or the challenges that you received in that time of prayer. Lectio Divina is a great tool, a great instrument that each one of us can use regardless of where we are in the spiritual path, whether we're a beginner or someone with more experience, to use the sacred scripture itself as a source of prayer to draw us closer to Christ so that we could see his action in our lives. God bless you, have a great day, and see you soon.